So I am finally back with more Elestral reveal discussions after far too long, honestly. And uh, pretty much negative is had a really busy and stressful last few days. Good news is it just made me even more excited to come back and actually discuss these. So I have a lot of energy, really want to discuss it, and I'm finally able to just put in more effort to post more content more regularly. So let's just get right into it. So it is 19 days until Kickstarter at the time this was released, and as I kind of alluded to, it's been a few days. Well, actually, it's been more than a few days, as it is November 2nd, and this was released, let's see, this was released on, where does it say? It should still say, right? 5 days ago? So, oh, there you go. October 28th. So that gives you an idea. It's a few days late, so of course, I've already seen this card. We've actually already discussed this card on a previous one, but I want to discuss it again. So, Emphyrix, I realize I was pronouncing it wrong, just due to aDrive streaming and saying the card's name, so that's really exciting. A little spoiler for talking about that stream later, but Emphyrix here, the more updated card effect, it's still 1 Fire Spirit, it's 3 attack, 3 defense, same as it was, and it's still, while the effect does change enchant to cast, the effect is still the same. When this Emphyrix is in the underworld during your opponent's end phase, you can spend 1 fire to cast an Emphyrix from your underworld, or to cast this Emphyrix. So exact same effect. And as I said before, pretty much everything I said then still applies now. This card's amazing. And in fact, it's actually a bit more amazing. Spoilers again for later for more card reveals. But this card is just phenomenal for any Ascension strategy. Doesn't matter what element it is. You just need to run fire in there and just get Emphyrix into your underworld. Now, at the time of this reveal, the easiest way to do that was just to enchant it. And you don't even need to enchant it and let it die. You don't even need to enchant it with fire. You can enchant it with whatever element you want, and you can make it like a 4/4 if you have a stadium mount. So that's not too bad either, or even just to counter certain things so your opponent can't respond with certain card effects that are, because some card effects don't work if there's or change how they work if there's certain enchanting spirits on board. So pretty neat in that regard, and then you just expend the fire, special cast this with whatever element you want. You do not need to special cast this with a fire, you just need to expend a fire. And boom, you've got an Elestral going into your turn where your opponent really can't interact with it. Well, okay, they can technically interact with it with some counter runes, such as Poison Tip Arrow, but it still gets you Elestral that they can't remove with like Invoke runes or Elestral effects. So that's really good. And then you could have an Elestral with any 1 spirit on it. You can easily send it to a 2 spirit Elestral with a few other cards. You might even be able to turbo into a 3 spirit Elestral off of this. Just really, really good for an Ascension strategy as a whole. And 3/3 isn't a terrible stat. It's not amazing, but it isn't terrible. So that's another bonus for this card. So this card's nuts. I think it's insane. Now, of course, it will be limited by how good Ascension strategies are. And there's still some questions behind that, as just the game mechanics themselves make those Elestrals a bit more high risk, high reward. And so, as in terms of meta, I don't know how good they will be, but for fun strategies, this card's phenomenal for that. That's really, I think, what makes this card most exciting. And of course, if we do get a good 2-spirit Elestral that we want to play in the meta, like this card just helps that out as well. So this card really is a phenomenal card, not because it has a powerful effect, not because it like wins you games, but because it is a very powerful enabler. And just like Tadpuff, its value, it's always going to be a good card, but its value is going to fluctuate based on how good the Ascension targets are. And in fact, I think this is even better than Tadpuff, as it doesn't use a card from your hand. And on top of that, this also can double for a swarm strategy. As for every Emphyrix and you have in your underworld, you can always just choose to expend a fire and cast it onto board to just go wide on board. So like you have 2 Emphyrix, you can bring them back. Emphyrix and Phyrix. I realize I'm not being consistent. And now I'm questioning which one it was. Well, you can correct me down in the comments down below how it's supposed to be pronounced. But back to, I completely got distracted from my swarm strategy. But that's just so good just to be able to get 2 more on board, as there's no wide board removal. If you can get over your opponent's Celestial, you can just start attacking your opponent's Spirit deck. That also seems pretty good and pretty scary as well. So I think that one's more likely to be what we might see this card used in the meta, is for like an aggressive swarm strategy. but of course the Ascension comparison is way too obvious. So, I mean, I pretty much just went over everything I talked about earlier, but this card's so good, I couldn't help just saying it again. So, yeah, I think that's about it for this card. So let's move on to the next one. So technically the next card is outside of the normal reveals for Kickstarter. Barabog was revealed on the same day as Emphyrix's official reveal. And I'm making a whole separate video on this one because this card kind of brought up a concern of mine, mainly with it being called a burn card. And yes, it's a burn card. That's not what the issue is, but I'm going to have a separate video on that. So pay attention to my channel for that one being uploaded, as it'll be a great discussion video as well. So let's move on to the next official Kickstarter reveal. So now we're on 18 days until Kickstarter, and today's reveal is not just this Majursa we see on the screen, but the 3 bears it mentions in its card effect. So we have gone over this effect before in a previous reveal from the extra cards that were given out to everyone who ordered the prototype decks. So it's all prototype version of this card. So just a refresher, is a 3 Fire Spirit Elestral with 12 attack, 12 defense. That reads this Majursa gains 2 attack for every Urscout, Ursmog, and Ursear on your field. Your Urscout, Ursmog, and Ursears cannot be attacked or targeted by card effects. So if I remember correctly, I should actually go back and check this before I say anything else. Okay, just want to check it to make sure I was right. This Majursa does have a slight, technically you can say it's a buff. I actually think it kind of nerfs the card a little bit, but it's saying that the part that your Urscout, Ursmog, and Ursears cannot be targeted by big card effects now, because originally from the prototype version, they just couldn't be targeted with attacks. Now you might be wondering, that's just a buff. What do you mean it's a nerf? And the reason I say it's a nerf is because I will need to verify this ruling, but I'm pretty sure it works this way. Resting on your laurels normally can only target Elestrals with the lowest spirit count if it's a tie you choose. Since those can't be targeted, the only target would then be Majursa. And if I'm correct about that ruling, that is technically a nerf to the card, as Resting on your laurels will be one of the most common ways to deal with this card. So that's why. Now, moving on from sets, this could easily end up being a buff. Just being able to protect your little dudes, to be able to do more stuff, might end up being pretty good. But as of right now, with the cards we know, I do kind of consider it a nerf. So if I'm wrong about that, leave it down in the comments below. I'll definitely address it as well, because that is very relevant. But I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Other than that, just the big question with this card when it was first revealed was, it's pretty cool, but how easy are you going to be able to spam the board and get out a 3-Spirit Elestral? That's the big question, because typically ascending is a very high risk, high reward strategy, and typically it's hard to then also swarm the board on top of that, and this card needs cards out. So that's the question for it. And otherwise, it becomes a pretty big attacker, which is pretty good, meaning it can't be easily attacked or most like your opponent's dealing with card effects anyway. So that attack, I don't think it's too important, if I'm going to be honest. Now, if your opponent can get out a 3-Spirit Elestral, then yeah, of course it's going to come in handy. But I don't think that'll be too common. I don't think we'll commonly see 2 3-Spirit Elestrals out facing off against each other. But enough said about this card. We just need to see the smaller dudes. So let's go here, and I will shrink down my webcam so we can actually see all these. And let's move it up here for right now. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so let's start with Ursmog, front and center. All of them are 1 Spirit Fire Elestrals, so this one is 2 attack, 3 defense, so foamy stat line. And it reads, you can spend 1 Fire Spirit to special cast an Urscout, Ursmog, Ursear from your hand in attack position. So you do need to see the others, but as you can run up to 6 or you need to have another copy of these in your hand, but since there will be 3 different ones, 9 each, I think that's pretty easy to do. So just to be able to get them out on board shouldn't be too hard. And in attack, it would obviously be nice if we could change it, but I think that is for the best. And we'll need to talk about the other ones for that effect. Now, of course, you can start straining Ursmogs. You can normal enchant Ursmog, expend 1 fire to special cast an Ursmog, to expend 1 again to special cast whatever. So you can easily swarm your board with this card. It's expensive, and the only one that has a semi-decent stat line is Ursear. So that is of note, but we'll read the other ones and you'll see kind of how they all fit together. So as a card by itself, it's a bit expensive, and I don't think it will be too great for any other fire deck unless you're running like a Majursa focus deck. Though this is a pretty neat engine, and honestly, I could see myself being very wrong about that initial impression. These actually be a pretty good engine for fire. But let's go over Ursear next. It is a 4 attack, 1 defense Celestial that reads, when this Ursear destroys an opponent's Celestial in battle, you can special cast an Urscout, Ursmog, or Ursear from your hand or deck in defense position. I really like that it's from both. So that's really nice. It just helps you pull out more from your deck. I don't think you'll ever be pulling out an Ursmog from your deck just because you won't be able to capitalize on its ability right away. More likely you're going to be calling out the Urscout, which we'll get to in a second. But hey, that's pretty cool. And you don't have to expend one. The 4 attack means that it's more likely to attack over stuff. It's not amazing attack, but so it's going to be not the easiest to necessarily get off this effect, but I don't think it'll be impossible, and as we kind of start getting various decks, it might be a bit easier. And fire can also provide some attack. So, of course, under Stadium, it's not too bad at 5 attack either. So, I think it would be a bit too good if it was at 5 attack, but I'm a bit worried that that 4 attack just won't be enough in some cases. We'll see just how good the lower stat Elestrals are with their effects, if we'll see enough balance between those versus just getting the better stats out. So we'll see about that one. But still, its effect is phenomenal to be able to just pull one out from your deck and go wide. That is, I think, worthwhile using Spirits on, especially when you can kind of keep up board presence. Obviously, you do have to be careful as you are committing a lot of Spirits, but I think it is still good value for that. Especially once we actually read Urscout, which I think is the one you'll be going for. So let's talk about Urscout. It is a 1 attack, 3 defense Celestial that reads, when this Urscout is destroyed in battle, you can special cast an Urscout, Ursmog, or Ursear from your hand or deck in defense position. Again, just phenomenal. It's pretty much a restricted foamy, which is fine. 1 attack, but let's be real here. You're casting this out off of an Ursear to expect it to die so you can float into more stuff. So in that regard, awesome. Really like it. Just a great way to kind of keep these going, swarming them out. And yeah. Now, I think most likely Ursmog, you'll want to call out an Ursear to attack. Off of Ursear, you'll most likely want to call an Urscout. An Urscout, depending on if your opponent has more Elestrals to attack with, you'll either go into another Urscout to keep floating into them. And then off of that, you'll either go into an Ursmog if you have like another Elestral in hand you want to be able to special cast into, or just an Ursear for next turn to start attacking over and, you know, spamming out more stuff. And also, the nice thing about Ursear and Urscout is that it is deck thinning as well. And I think another important point is Urscout and Ursear, I think it's very important that they can special enchant from deck, while Ursmog I think would be too good if it could. So I really like the balance on all these cards to make sure they are not broken. That being said, though, I'm a bit worried that they are too balanced and just won't be good. But as I think where these kind of fit in very well with Majursa is, I think they fit in as a perfect, fun deck. I think these cards do exactly what they need to make like a fun little deck that you can put together. I don't think it'll be very meta, but I see some potential for meta viability with the engine of these 1-spirit Elestrals just separate from Majursa. So I'm personally really excited to try to build a Majursa deck with all these dudes. I think it'll be really fun. I think the biggest limiter for it will just be the fact that you are kind of burning through your spirit deck just to call all these out. And I'll be honest, I don't know if you'll be able to easily get out Majursa with these spams to warrant how many spirits you're actually going through for subpar stat lines. It's just, that's really, Majursa looks to be your payoff for that, and I don't know if it's enough. There's a chance this also could inform a really great swarm strategy, but you still need to be able to answer your opponent's Elestrals in board to be able to do so. I think that this kind of deck, it's really hard to judge based off of the prototype deck format because nothing exists that is like it so far. And I think that'll be very... So this deck especially will need a lot of testing, and we'll have to see how the actual format compares to prototype deck to see the true power of these cards. But I think I said it pretty well, actually. There's definitely potential. We'll see how it goes. But based on our understanding of Elestrals right now, I think that the payoff right now isn't good enough for what these cards cost to do. So I think that's a good way to put it. Definitely a lot of potential there. Definitely a lot of fun. We'll see about meta. So yeah, let's move on to the next day's reveals. So as you can tell by the t-shirt change, I am now filming this on the next day. So that is November the 3rd. Yeah, November the 3rd. And I moved over to Twitter here because we have another card here that was revealed on Twitter the same day, October 29th, that I wanted to discuss. And this one was actually named from got name input from the Discord, is revealed with one other card, which we'll be talking about in a little bit. And this is Oystress. So it's a 1-spirit, 1 attack, 3 defense water Elestral. Let me pull up the full image here. that says its effect is this Oystress gains 1 defense for every enchanting water spirit on the field. So this is kind of a reverse Tectoros or Volcaries, though, well, I was about to say it's technically worse because only it's the 1 attack, but at the same time, to hit over a defense, you need to be 1 greater. So actually, I think that's fine. So this one's really interesting. It's just a giant wall that you can throw down that your opponent might not be able to attack over. Obviously, we just enchant this for defense. It's fine. A lot of things do hit the 4 attack, more things are trying to hit 5 attack. So I don't think it's kind of hard to judge with defense. I think 4 defense is actually a pretty good break point with the cards we know right now, as most cards will need some other assistance to do so. And I actually don't think this is the best one to try to use removal on, as it's not proactively doing anything, it's just obnoxious, but your opponent might have to rely on that. So it might be a great way to bait out your opponent's answers, such as Laurels or Earthquakes. I think an awful answer to this. Like, it just feels bad if you have to Earthquake to get rid of this. Poison Tip Arrow, that's another feels bad since it's 2 spirits. Shield won't be able to proc because this card isn't attacking. So honestly, quite interesting. Now, 4 defense I don't think is the best. Obviously, you really want higher defense, like 5 or 6. And you need other cards to kind of support this. Stadium would be the cheapest. That's not too bad. Like, you could flip off of this from a Foamy and just have a giant wall here. Arguably, the Mustachian is better because it just exists at that 6 defense break point. And I think that's going to be the hardest challenge for this card, is we just have Mustachian. As long as Mustachian's defense doesn't decrease, it's just going to, I think, be better than this, because it automatically has that 6/6 is such a hard break point to hit over, and then you have the added benefit of flipping it. I don't think necessarily having this card be able to gain more defense will necessarily be that great, but at the same time, it's another great defensive wall if you just need more of it. So I think it does exist in that space, but at the same time, I just don't think it quite does enough. I think you'd rather just have the consistent 6 defense, or like the consistent 5 defense of, say, a Smoltuga if you're running a Fire Water deck. So I think there's some kind of it's an interesting card for sure, but I think having a defensive tool that requires enchanting spirits on the field isn't as good as an offensive tool, which will kind of hold this card back. It certainly is interesting, and I'm kind of thinking of this as I go, if you can't really tell by how I keep kind of going back and forth. But I think my final conclusion is that you would rather just go into one of your other ones that have a higher printed power or printed defense than this. And I know, like, the tweet mentions like Foamy, Poseidon, Galaxy. Galaxy's not too bad with this, I will admit that. Just Galaxy for it was quite interesting. And I'm assuming this is just confirmation that you apply the defensive change, and whatever that increases, it switches over to its attack. That, I think, is a bit of a confusing ruling, but I'm assuming by this tweet that that is the intended use of it. But that is interesting, but at the same time, I don't know how much you really want to just have a Poseidon floating on field for it to be popped by Rune Destruction as well. So all in all, again, with like the Galaxy, I think if you're throwing out a Galaxy, you'd rather just have a Mustachian out on board that already has the 6 defense, or like a Smoltuga, which is at 5. I'm just repeating myself at this point just to make sure that I have thought it all the way through. But I think my final verdict on this one is just, it is an interesting card, but I think right now you'd rather just play with the higher printed defense Elestrals anyway for this strategy. So we'll see in the future. This could end up being better than I think it is. We'll see. So curious about what your thoughts are with this card. All right, moving up to October 30th's reveals. This would have been Sunday. It is the Leonite Full Art here. So what is that countdown? It would be, they don't even say. So wait, hold on. It was, it should say 18 days. So this one is 17 days till Kickstarter. And we've got the Full Art Leonite here, which looks really cool of it in a cave. You've got the Kinleos as well. You've got the Wormites on the cave roof. Looks really, really cool. I can't wait to see this in a hollow pattern. So Leonite exists in prototype, and it still has a 7 attack, 2 defense, 2 fire spirit. But I really like this change here. It just reads, as long as Leonite's an attack, neither player can cast Invoke Runes. Its previous effect also added something about your opponent not being able to invoke runes to Leonite's casting, but that just didn't make sense because Invoke Runes didn't work like that. So, I mean, I guess technically, well, Invoke Runes don't even get chains of stuff, really. So, yeah, that interesting thing there. But I'm glad they kind of cleaned it up. That one sentence text kind of blocks the artwork here, but still that just one sentence text makes it look a whole lot cleaner in my opinion, and kind of does what it needs to. So interesting that shutting down invoke runes, that can definitely cause a lot of friction if your opponent didn't have any counter runes to answer it, as they would then have to rely on Elestral effects or attacking over it, but most likely this might be a bit difficult at the 7 attack breakpoint, as that's what a lot of Two-Spirit Elestrals hit. So I definitely do like this card. I think it is something we're going to see in a lot of, probably, I could see this being like a tier 2 deck. I think it's good enough to be considered that. I still have my reservations whether Two-Spirit Elestrals are worth it for competitive decks, and that's why I don't want to put it in like a tier 1 deck, as I think they might be too slow in a dead card in your hand a lot of the time. And you can see how clean the 1 sense looks in this card. So that's kind of my opinion on Leonite. Good card, just has the issue of all the 2-spirits. So, but of the 2-spirits, it definitely has more of the payoff. Also, is that a Rummagem in the background? Yeah, it is. Okay, that's pretty cool. But yeah, let's move on to the next day's reveal. Before we get to 16 days until Kickstarter reveal, we actually had another one. This is the other one that the community got an input in naming, and it's Hummbust. I actually recommended that this be, what was it? Humber, like hummingbird, but ember. So interesting, a Hummbust like combustion slash. Still pretty cool name. So it's 1 attack, 2 defense, 1 fire spirit Elestral that says when either player casts a rune, your opponent must move the top 2 cards of their deck into the underworld. So interesting card here, as it kind of it allows for a mill strategy here. Don't know how good that will be in the current iteration of Elestrals. You're going to need a lot more mill, as people don't really go too quickly for their decks unless their deck's specifically designed for that. But this is still a really neat card for that style deck, as well as, since it's either player, you might just be able to lock your opponent out of, I think more of the practical use for this is actually just locking your opponent out of casting any runes for their turn until they attack over this, meaning that you can possibly stall out their Ambrosias. Might be pretty good. Stall out their Nectar of the Gods, stall out their, well, they wouldn't use Eruption anyway on this, but you kind of get the point. There are Divine Elestrals as well. It can just cause it some stall tactics, or just, I think it's the more practical use of this, because your opponent doesn't want to have to mill the top 2. But honestly, where Elestrals is at right now, and the mill cards we have access to, I really don't think that the opponent would really care too much, honestly. It's like, oh, well, if I lose those cards, I lose those cards. I'm probably not going to deck as one end before that. But still, I'm glad this card exists. It's a good start to a mill strategy. Probably would have liked it in a bit of a later set, just because we already have fire kind of, well, we do have Cinder, but since this is the kind of strategy that would need more support, I kind of like seeing another set that kind of tries to support mill, but, you know, maybe not a bad thing that they're trying to get some mill in the set now, and then they can just further expand on it later, so that's always a possibility. So, real interesting card here, and, I mean, I really can't think of much other use other than, like, a mill strategy or trying to stall out your opponent. So, could be interesting to see. I think you're going to get real creative to see use in this one, set 1. In general, I just don't think it will be run. It's more the precedence that is interesting than the actual use cases right now. So yeah, let's actually move on to the proper reveal for the day. And it is, since this is on Halloween, 16 days, and is just announcing this TGA authenticated Halloween Pandicine. It's just super cute with little jack-o'-lanterns around it. It says Happy Halloween, and still pretty much does the exact same thing Pandicine has always done. It's not too much to say about that. It just looks really cute, and there's the kind of better artwork of it. Little glow effect there, so looks cute. That is about it. It was a special order that's already been kind of sold out for Halloween, only 50 available. But yeah, still pretty cool. I like that these little kind of promotional cards just to kind of rep the game, maybe getting some more money for it. Really like it. So not really too much to say about there. I don't know if I really talked about, I guess I could go quickly over Pandicine. It's an interesting card for sure. Be able to grab back Invoke Runes is pretty neat if you need stuff. Only problem is a lot of times you'll have to give up your normal enchant for it, unless you can find ways to easily move spirits to the Pandicine. So I think this definitely has a lot of potential going forward. For right now, I think it's a bit too slow for a lot of strategies. But at the same time, if there's a rune you really want to get back, like you just need one final eruption, Pandicine could work pretty good for that. But you really, it's kind of hard to justify just throwing down a 1/4 on the board if you're not using its effect. So there's, I mean, there's also possibility in like a burn deck if you just want to, if you can keep an Elestral on board to send over it, use Pandicine to disenchant to grab the eruption back. Like, there's plays you can make. But I think this, where the potential of this card lies, is just moving forward as we get more cards to hopefully accelerate some more Earth Spirits onto it to make use of its effect. or just better rune cards in general that we would actually want to give a more normal enchant for. So that's my thoughts on Pandicine. So yeah, let's go on to the next reveal. So shotgunning through these reveals, we've got 15 days until Kickstarter. So this is from November 1st, makes sense. And we have Full Art Penterror. So this one I was actually really excited to see. It looks awesome. But even more interesting is there was a change to its effect from when it was revealed on the first day of these reveals. And that is that instead of Penterror needing to be destroyed by battle for you to get the special cast for Hydreigs and Twindras, it's now destroyed by card effects, which I think is a huge and really important change for this. As I said in my review, I don't see your opponent realistically attacking over it because it has such a phenomenal attack stat, and that defense stat is still really hard to hit over even with the 2 Spirit Elestrals. So I just didn't see this thing really dying in battle. If the opponent was going to get rid of it, it was going to be through a rune or a destruction, or I would be through either a removal effect, I should say. So obviously this one, Shield still deals with this card. I think that's fine. Just have some more. That way it's not just super oppressive, but just the being able to now spawn stuff off when it's destroyed by card effect, I think is huge and more likely to come up and makes this card a whole lot scarier. And especially the other reason why I said even if it attacked over, I don't know if you'd really want to use this effect just because your opponent might have something big out, and unless you have something that can attack over it or deal with it, bringing out a ton of small guys just kind of stalls and is setting up spirits on your board. Like, sure, it's a bit better than nothing because at least then you have a chance to ascend to maybe be able to attack over it with the Penterror. But the card just kind of felt like it was conflicting with itself with its good stat line, but having a when destroyed effect, meaning that most of the time the opponent was just going to wait to, even if they didn't have the removal right then and there, they're going to wait for it. So great change overall. I think this makes it super scary, but this, especially since a lot of times the opponent won't have something on board that your Hydreigs or Twindras might be able to attack over as well. So that's really, really neat. It's just a great way to kind of swarm the board to try to close out the game. But at the same time, I think it's not just all this card is busted amazing, because obviously Shield still counters it. And the other big thing that I think with this card is you have to be very careful when you choose to enchant Hydreigs and Twindras, because you're actively putting spirits on your board that now your opponent can remove. And you're moving spirits from your spirit deck. Those are no longer there to protect you from losing, so your opponent could also bait you to do that, so then either maybe you don't have as many spirits in your spirit deck to survive like burn shenanigans, or maybe they might be able to go over the top with some cards. So that definitely will add a big skill hat. For now, I think it actually is good enough just to be able to swarm the board and be able to attack over your opponent, and it's really scary. But in the future, especially as we get more burn cards, I think that's where this card can be, if your opponent's playing a burn deck, you can easily punish by this card. Especially since I think my only one reservation is how often can you get this card? Well, okay, I was about to say how often can you get this card out, and then I just remembered what Twindra and Hydreig's effects are. So never mind. Yeah, you can probably accelerate into this pretty early. You just kind of need your Hydreig or Twindra to be able to do so. Because my one, just iterate what I was thinking about how if you're in the late game, you might not have enough spirits to really make use of this effect either. So just some thoughts on this card. I think this is one that's going to be really fun to test, and this is why I keep going back and forth on all my points. I just need to test it now. But really like that change. I think it's a lot more conducive to make this card really powerful and scary. So awesome. All right, we're at 14 days till Kickstarter with this one. This is yesterday's reveal, November the 2nd, and we have Emphyrix. Dan said it in the live stream he had the day before this was revealed. I just honestly forget how he pronounced it. I could go back and watch the VOD. I'm just going to pronounce it Emphyrix because that's a bit easier to say. But it's the stellar version of it, which is really neat. We had this teased, then officially revealed, and then I'll get into that. This was also leaked by Dan himself during his live stream, so now we just have the official reveal that he actually moved it up, I'm pretty sure. But nothing else to really say about it because I already discussed its effect in the reveal possibly earlier in this video or in my previous video reviewing these. Don't know how I'm going to break these up yet. But Emphyrix here, really neat Elestral, just helps with a ton of like swarm and ascension strategies for pretty much all elements. So that's really awesome. And just the black looks so clean on it. I love it. I think the only other thing I'd be like would have been really cool with this for a stellar pattern would be like a blue flame. That would look awesome, but like you can't go wrong with like jet black either. So looks sick. So not much else to say about this card that I haven't already said. So I'm just going to leave it at that. So that is me all caught up on the official reveals through the Twitter account and YouTube page. So excited to finally be caught up with this and continue to get these out more frequently because I really do enjoy talking about it. And of course, as always, I'd love to hear your opinions on these cards, as I think there's a lot of valuable conversation, and it's been really hard to actually judge these cards, and that's why I kind of keep going back and forth and just kind of theory crafting on it, like setting up like thought experiments and such, because we have the prototype deck format, but so much has changed, it feels really hard to accurately judge it now. And I really just testing needs to be done once we get like especially once we get the official effects of everything. That's when we will really start seeing a meta shape and such. And I mean, just seeing all these cards being playtesting, I'm really excited to build like a Penterror deck. I want to build a Majursa deck, see how that works. For meta decks, because I don't think those two will be the most meta. That one, I think there will be better deck builders out there on. I'm still probably going to try some of their lists and try to compete in the meta. But that one, I'm a bit more shaky on what will actually be meta. And I've kind of always been that way with games. I'm better at kind of focusing on certain strategies than necessarily like this will be amazing. More building out a strategy to make it the best it can. But still, that's just some fun stuff I want to do. But before wrapping up this video, one final thing I want to say is there was a lot of unofficial reveals. They're not the confirmed official effects. They're more along the lines of prototype, because Dan did open a box on stream, so you'll be able to look forward to that video either after this one or the one after that. I don't know when I'm going to release it officially, as I do have one other video queued up as well. But you can look, I'm going to discuss all those cards, even though they aren't the official effects. I still think they'll give us a good idea of what their effects will be. And it's just interesting to talk about. And there's a few updated cards I also wanted to talk about that I need to bury up the images for as well to remind myself. So definitely look forward to that discussion coming soon. And if you're excited to hear me, if you've been enjoying hearing me discuss these effects and want to also make sure you catch that when I release it, make sure you subscribe to my channel, turn on the notification bell so you're notified when I upload. And of course, for this video, leave your comments down below what your thoughts on all of these cards. I'd love to hear your opinions so we can kind of get better ideas flowing. Maybe I was wrong about something, you might be able to change my mind. Just really, I want to hear all about it. The discussion is really interesting. And yeah, and of course, leave a like on this video, as engagement also really helps so we can catch a wider audience and hopefully build that discussion even more. The more people we have discussing, the better the ideas we're going to get are. So that being said, though, look forward to more content coming out real soon.